Hey, what's up, guys? This is Justin from Justice League Swag, and today I'm going to be doing a deck profile on my top 8 swords deck that I played this weekend in New York. Personally, I went through the entire tournament undefeated, even in top 8, with one tie in Swiss against Plague, because I had never played against it. So I got first round off of it, then he got second round, and then we just agreed to a tie because my team had already won. So first starting up, the buddy is still levitating. Can't really play the deck without it. I'm going to be doing my one of items next. One, Niggle Ring. You only need to see this to build up your gauge if you're playing against stuff like what is it? Thunder Emperor Fangs, just so you could play the spell that skips their turn. Otherwise, you're just trying to build up gauge so that you can play your Durandal, just in case your opponent plays any type of card that, what is it, destroys items or all of your items. So that's what I usually do. I only equip Durandal, like hard cast it, if my opponent looks like they're about to blow my field. Next up for one ofs, I am playing one Caldeball Replica. I'm only playing one because you can search it out, and ideally you only need it against a Thor. I didn't really face any other decks that did a lot of burn damage besides, what was it, Plague. So, outside of those decks, you don't really need it. Next up, Trishula. I'm running at one. It's primary in there to pop cards on your opponent's field. The sword deck is so fast now that you really don't need to control your opponent's field. And I put another one of these inside just for dealing with, what is it called? Faster decks like Thunder Emperor Fangs. Like if I needed to out damage or poke or destroy stuff on that field. I also put in another one when I was playing against Plague, just to keep destroying the items so they couldn't get to that win con of turning over my flag. So it's pretty good, but it's just double attack. And then Excalibur already has double attack, so you don't really need a ton of these, especially because their cast cost is so heavy, like 2 gauge and sending a card to the drop zone. Next up for one of those, Zolfgar Replica. I was main decking one and siding one because this stops your cards from being bounced on the field, and it also has the nice tech of Penetrate. So the Penetrate helped out a lot for his center base stuff, and then the not being bounced. Like, I didn't play against anything that was actually bounced, but like for my practice testing, a lot of my friends were maining like what is it for Chaos, the Ibuki that can bounce a card, and if they bounce Leviathan, almost all of your items fall off the field and you lose your aggro for the turn. Next up for one of those, I was playing one Iron Sword Replica. You always go into this card when you're playing against a Thor just to keep them from boasting up their attack and defense too high, or like Thunder Emperor Fangs, because then it shuts down most of the attack cards in their deck. So it's like they only have like the infinite backs to go to for that. And then it shuts down all other decks that have 10k monsters like Jaeger. Like Jaeger literally can't do anything to this except destroy it. So if you equip Durandal, it's just like boom, GG. Next up was Armaz Replica. I was maining one. The only reason why I ran this is because Chaos is doing that lake attack spell cheese, so I ran this to get around that, like this, and with my spell card to ramp up life, so they just couldn't cheese me. I would just counter play Skill General's Insight while they were playing cards. So before they got out their what's this called, Lattice, they couldn't link attack spell cheese me any type of way. It's like So this was really clutch, especially in games where I had to go first. Like before we got that stupid ruling of like if you lost, you had to go first. Every time I won my first round against one of my opponents, they would always make me go first the next round. So just to assure that I couldn't be OTK'd, when I would overkill with Savage Form, I would always go into this and this, just to assure that they couldn't just wipe me out. Because it's not guaranteed that you'll draw shields, so it's better to be safe than sorry. Next up is my 2-ofs. Only 2 Durandal. You can counter equip it and you can search it. Your primary need for this item is so that the rest of your items can't be destroyed. Well, the rest of your heroes on the field. And this actually saved me against the Thunder Emperor Fangs player. I waited for them to enter battle, and they used the ability of like this size 3 guy. If they have 4 or less life, when it attacks, it gets destroyed all of the items on my field. So I counter equipped it when they entered battle, just so they couldn't wipe out my stuff. And also because I kind of wanted to bait them into going for destruction over trying to actually kill me with like the infinite bats. Because it's like, as a sword player, you really don't want to see cards like that unless you have the spell that can end your opponent's battle phase. Next up are 4-ofs. Leviathan. You cannot play the deck without it. Well, I didn't use the overkill of this much. Like, the only times you use the overkill of this Leviathan is if you don't see Savage Form at all, you have no way of getting to Savage Form, or if you ran through a ton of spells and like the monsters of your deck. Like every game that I ran through like a ton of spells early game, I was like, okay, it's safe to overkill because the majority of the spells are already out of the way. That is the only time that you use this overkill. Otherwise, I almost always use Savage Form's overkill, where you get to search for specific items. Next up for 4-ofs, I ran 4 Scabbard, and it's really good because you can search for any item in your deck. A lot of times I would equipment change and bounce this back to my hand before equipping Leviathan, just so once I equipped Leviathan, I could search my deck for other items that I needed. So it's really good and tacky. One thing that I did a lot with it was, I don't know if you know, but when you equip it, at any time, you discard a card from your hand and you search your deck for item. So just to build up gauge sometimes, I would enter battle with Savage Form's enter battle skill. I would equip this from the drop zone, then discard an Awardal and search for the item that I wanted, primarily like Durandal or something. Then Awardal skill would kick off and I gauge one and draw. So then I will also drop this for the skill General's Insight to gain 4 life. And then when it came to my opponent's turn, I could negate with Bloody Holy Grail and then play the skill General and gain 4 life. So this was really good to keep going into multiple times in order to grab items that I needed specifically out of the deck, like Excalibur. I kind of made this deck to have like an ultimate defense and ultimate offense, so I dragged out a lot of games against a lot of decks until I guaranteed the win. But lastly, for 4-ofs will be Excalibur. It's the best offensive card in the deck, and it can steal games from a lot of decks. So like with Athora, this is kind of like one of the first items you want to go into, along with the damage reducer, just because you want to force them to overturn and then you take no damage, because they can't counter to this. So the only way of getting around to this, like to counter cast Brush Up or something before you actually attack, and then that way you could get like the overturn out of the way and then just massacre them next turn if they don't drop the 3-cutter Thor and try to kill you your next turn. So it's at 4s. It's the best offensive item in the game, in my opinion. And Amir and the other guy that came in second team, his deck was a little different. He was still running the old Excalibur, so I'm going to try to get him to do a deck profile on his sword variant. Because he was running a lot of stuff that was different than mine, like from the matches that I've seen. But continuing, next up is Leviathan Savage form. I only run at 3. Because you can search it out. More than likely, a lot of games I started off with it. It's not really a minus when you start off with this because of all and a lot of the items that you will discard, you could just get back off of his old skill. And then sometimes, like me, equipping this to get an Excalibur in the drop zone and then activating this Overkill to get another Excalibur in the drop zone was super beneficial. Because then as soon as I finished doing that, since this is discard a card instead of discard a card and pay a gauge, then I could just activate the one who leads and equip 2 Excalibur for my drop zone. So it's like not only do I have defensive swords equipped from the Overkill, I also have the 2 offensive ones from discarding them. So this card is pretty clutch. Like, it sets up a lot of plays where you can constantly ditch weapons and then bring them back your next turn. So you could defensively drop them during your opponent's turn and then pick up your items again once you enter battle with this. So one thing that I did a lot is, like, after equipping stuff with Savage form, I would use Infallible Blade Wall skill to send one of my items that was free to equip to the drop zone in order to draw. And then once I enter battle, I just re-equip it. So it's just a free plus. It's all kinds of wacky ways that you can use this. Like, I'm not main decking it now for the sake of this tournament, but with the impact, I sided them. When you use the impact and get another attack phase, you can also equip another equip an item from your drop zone with Savage's skill, because it's not once per turn, and it says when you enter the battle phase, you get to equip an item from your drop zone. So this allows you to abuse the hell out of Excalibur, because what you do is, after finishing your battle phase and swinging with Excalibur, you can send it to the drop zone with Infallible Blade Wall if you haven't used this skill already, in order to draw. Then once you play the impact to gain another battle phase, you can equip Excalibur from your drop zone by paying its equip cost, which is discarding another item from your hand. So it's like all kinds of like really crazy stuff you can pull off with this deck. It's just, it's like hard to play if you use it that way. But it's really fun. Alright, lastly for 3 ofs, Dainsleif Replica, I'm still running at 3. Because if you go first, it's one of your best items to go into, especially if you hard equip cast it. More than likely, almost everybody's going to take that first hit, and you're only going to deal 1 damage. You gain 2 life gauge. But that's the important part, and draw, because that's what you want if you have 3 heroes. So it also counts if you have Infallible Blade Wall on the field, because I know some games I only hit like Blade Wall and then one of these, and it's like if it hits the +2 life and then gauge and draw help put me in the game. Plus is also a mind fuck for a lot of people. Like, a lot of people would negate this when I swing with it just because they don't want to let me plus. And then they ultimately ended up dying to the rest of my swords because they didn't count the damage that I had on board. So I like swinging with this early and often. Next up, I'm going to be doing the monster lineup. The only monsters I run in this deck are Alvadal now. Those are the only monsters that you should run now. It makes all of the cards where it's like, where you would be discarding to get an ability off, instead of a +0, it makes it a +1. So, good card is good. I even did something like really crazy one game where it's like, I was attacking somebody that was playing the Dark Thor, and when I attacked him, he made me discard a card from my hand. So I like got an Alvadal from drop zone just to discard it to get around his ability, engage and draw. Next up, spells. Great Spell Widus that I am running at 2. I only main boarded 2 because it only really helps you against Thunder Emperor Fangs. Like, against Plague, you don't really need to use it. Against Chaos, they're running Lattice as of now, so it doesn't help, because they just spell negate it. So I am running 2 of these, and I'm siding 2. So every time I played against Thunder Emperor Fangs, like I played 3 bat stacks. So every time I played against them, I sided in the other 2. You need that card just to keep them from playing the impact that does 20 damage or death. Next up, Merlin's Advice. It's a great card, but you can only use once per turn, so I'm only running in at 3. Fable of the Sword Sage. I'm only running at 2. I don't like paying life in this deck, and especially in this meta, so I'm only running at 2. And I have to ditch an item in order to get it off. But I did use it for its plus 7k ability once. Infallible Blade Wall, I'm also running at 3. Like, this card is amazing, but it's amazing if you draw it. If it goes to the drop zone, then you gotta waste Bloody Holy Grail just to get it back. Next up for 3 ofs, I'm running 3, the Skill General's Insight. Against a lot of decks, I've used the hell out of this. Like, I'll Bloody Holy Grail, then countercast this, drop one of my items that I could get back for free to gain 4 life, and then when they attack again, I'll Bloody Holy Grail again and grab this again and drop one of my items to get up to 4. So it's like if they have the 5 damage impact, they can't kill you, or they can't get your life low enough just to finish you off. So next up, Gengar. I am running at 3 as well. Ideally, you ditch Excalibur or Alvidal, or whatever you don't need in order to just cycle through your deck. It helped out a lot if I didn't have an opening hand that I actually wanted. Lastly, for 3 ofs, the One Who Leads. It's only once per turn, and you could get it back from the drop zone with Bloody Holy Grail. So I only run it at 3. And this is how I fetch my Excaliburs when I don't want to hard cast them. And then lastly, for spells, Bloody Holy Grail at 4. This card, like, defensively, like, this card is, like, one of the best negates in the game. My main board is 53 cards. I tried really hard to get it down to 50, but 53 was the lowest I could get it. Next up, I'm going to do the sideboard. I was running 3 Obstruct for that Loop deck or Chaos. 2 of the Impact for the Mirror Match of Swords or Plague. And it's like anything else that could just like end your battle phase or make your battle phase like not optimal. Lastly, the 2 White Stack sided for Thunder Emperor Fang. Next up, the 1 more Zolfikar replica to stop item bouncing. The 1 of Trishula for any other items that were like not optimal that I want to take out. Like if I wasn't playing against a Thor or some type of burn deck, I would just take that item out, the Calibog. And then lastly, Rumman the Sword King. For any decks that could negate the abilities of my items on the field, or I actually sided this in against Plague to give me an extra like power and defense bump. So guys, please like and subscribe, and we'll have more deck profiles coming up. I'm going to start working on some more of my Dragon Ball Super decks and hitting some more big tournaments for that to try to do more decent deck profiles. I'm also going to try to talk to some of the other teams that topped this past weekend and get them to do actual profiles on their decks. And I think we're going to be doing a video on this stuff Tuesday or Wednesday. So thanks and peace.